Don't you just love the feeling of fall in the air? I do. It's my favorite time of year, and I'm lucky because even though today is August 31st, here in Prague it already feels like fall. It's overcast without being gloomy, it's breezy and chilly without being stingingly cold, the leaves are falling off the trees, it's just gorgeous in every way. So I was walking around today and I was thinking about one of my favorite parts about fall, the fact it reminds me of playing Gold, Silver, and Crystal as a kid. I still think that fall is the best time to play those games, as well as Park Gold and Soul Silver. So I was thinking about that, and I eventually arrived at the idea to do this video about the competitive side of GSC. Its defining feature, Snorlax. Now, if you are familiar with the stereotypes of the various generations of competitive Pokemon, then you probably know the stereotypes of Gen 2. Every team is stall and games last a million turns. You know, that's not entirely true, but mainly that Snorlax is the best by a mile. And that is entirely true. So that is the subject of today's video. While this is not going to be the most informative for more experienced players, then for people who don't really play Gen 2, then this will shine a light on just why Snorlax is so good. And even if you are a more experienced GSC player, I still think you'll like this video because of this awesome National Park remix I found, which I will link in a comment. And also, you probably just like the sound of my voice. I like to think that, because the opposite is just too painful to think about. Anyway, so before we get started, I'll just make my usual plugs for the good of the channel and whatnot. So I have a Discord. It's a lot of fun to hang out there with other past gen fanatics or competitive Pokemon in general. We got some good Gen 8 and VGC guys, and it's just a good place to hang out. I talked about movies for an hour this morning with a friend in there. It's a great place to hang out, yada yada. Okay, I have a Patreon if you really like my voice and want to give me a couple bucks every month. And finally, liking and commenting the video helps a lot with the algorithm, so we can make me a superstar. Yeah, alright, let's get into it. Why is Snorlax so good? First of all, before we talk about why it's good, we have to talk about the fact that if you are playing a serious GSC match, both you and your opponent will use Snorlax 100% of the time. Yeah, most GSC tournaments have 100% Snorlax usage, and the only time they don't is if a player either won without using their Snorlax, without revealing it, rather, which is rare but can happen, like if Smeargle passes Agility to Swords Dance Marowak and the game is immediately over. Or the case where it's the end of the season in a team tournament and either your team has already made playoffs or will not make playoffs, and so you just mess around with a bunch of UUs or a Snorlax-less team for fun or whatever. However, in a serious GSC game where both players want to win, then both sides will use Snorlax. So what we are doing today is looking at why that is the case. Why it is always better to have Snorlax on your team than to not have it on your team. Now, the nice thing about this video is that I don't have to dig up any replays to show why Snorlax is good, or show Snorlax in action, because I can just say, look up literally any GSC replay. If you have like a scenario where like the Smeargle pass to Marowak thing, then okay, that's the exception, but like 99 out of 100 GSC replays, Snorlax is going to be in the thick of it. It's going to be getting in on all the action. It's going to be switching in, dishing out damage, taking hits, the whole 9 yards. I'm waiting for the siren to pass because we have all the time in the world, because we're very relaxed, and we have National Park in the background because National Park is amazing, and you can take it slow. That's one thing I like about the early generations. You can play them fast, but unlike, let's say, Black and White, where you're very often forced into a very, very fast games, then in Gen 2, while it's also possible to play offensively, then you can also, take it slow. And I like having that option. It's tough in some metagames, but, anyway, I like that it's more widespread in GSC. And Snorlax is a big reason for that. So let's get into it. Why is Snorlax so hard to take out? Well, first of all, look at those stats. That HP is obviously huge, but a big HP stat and super low defenses don't always get you too far. Like, think about Wailord. Wailord has a huge HP stat, but it is incredibly frail. But Snorlax, while it doesn't have a good defense stat, I believe that with its HP, it's roughly as physically bulky as Umbreon, which is pretty good. Umbreon's pretty tanky. So, it's not going to be, taking a million physical attacks, but, it's pretty hard to break through it. Let's take a look at something like Nidoking's Earthquake, one of the more common physical attacks. So, yeah, it's pretty much never 4-hit KOing. It's a 5-hit KO. And so Snorlax benefits in GSC from the maxed out EV system, where it's got full bulk, and the lack of super hard hitting attacks. In later generations, then there's stronger attacks, and there's more passive damage flying around, and there's higher base power, or there's stronger Pokemon using higher base power moves, and more boosting items as well, whereas in GSC, nearly everything runs leftovers, and then, apart from a couple Miracle Berries or no items on Thief Pokemon, and occasionally something very, very rare, like Thick Club Marowak, then mostly everything's running leftovers. Attacks aren't really getting boosted, and a fully bulked out Snorlax really loves that. So, and as well as the lower base power of moves and the lack of boosting items. So, it takes even those physical hits pretty well. I mean, even something like, let's look at Tyranitar's Dynamic Punch. Should put that on there. Yeah, T-Tar is a strong Pokemon, but it's, D-Punch is never 2-hit KOing from full. That's a pretty strong attack. So, that just shows just how bulky Snorlax is. I mean, it's not even likely to break 50%. So, and on the special side, of course, Snorlax has an immense special defense stat, and this allows it to take any special move, because remember, in Gen 2, then there is no physical special split. Attacks are sorted by type, so it takes all electric moves, because all electric moves are special. And since there are no special moves that hit it super effectively, because it's a normal type, then it takes all special moves. So this is the strongest special move you're going to be encountering. Zapdos is Thunder, and it is favored to 4-hit KO if all of them hit, of course. The fact that Zapdos even uses Thunder to begin with is symbolic of how big a deal Snorlax is. Snorlax is everywhere, and for offensive teams, then you are not going to be able to wall it, for reasons we'll get into. You need to be able to hit it as hard as possible to limit its opportunities. And thus, players are perfectly willing to risk 70% Thunders just because the damage difference is so much bigger. Being able to pick off, let's take a look at Thunderbolt for comparison. You might not think, oh, come on, that's not so big a deal. And then suddenly you can't even break 26% on Snorlax, and it rests in your face, and yikes. So, Thunder's minimum is almost an entire 2% higher than Thunderbolt's absolute maximum. So, let's see the comparisons here. So, yeah, Thunder is the standard. It's also the fact that you can generally afford to miss one in the GSC landscape because everything's so bulky. So if you miss one, you're probably not getting KO'd in return, and the upsides are huge. But Thunder is very much a product of Snorlax. So the fact that Snorlax can eat even Thunders up is impressive. Now, Snorlax is not a perfect Zapdos counter, because with spikes down and Zapdos switching in and out and Snorlax eventually having to rest, it can be taken advantage of. But we're not saying that Snorlax is a perfect special wall to every special attacker. It's just that look at how well it takes even this incredibly powerful special attack it doesn't resist. You might think, oh my, most people say, wow, Zapdos Thunder really pounds Snorlax, but it's really more a case of, I can't believe that non-resistant Pokemon takes so little, because it's not even a Blissey. You know, people might think, well, if you want special bulk, why not use Blissey? Well, it's because Snorlax is also a massive offensive threat, but we'll get to that. So, we mentioned that there are no special attacks that hit Snorlax super effectively. This isn't like Gen 4 and up where there's things like Focus Blast and Aura Sphere, or even, you know, super effective hidden power fighting, let's say. But on the physical side, it only has one weakness, fighting. Now, fighting types do hit... a fighting move would hit Snorlax hard. Remember, a fighting move off a high attack stat, because... and even that's not enough, because remember that Tyranitar Dynamic Punch, which is pretty much as strong as a non-stab fighting move is going to get, even that doesn't 2-hit KO from full. So you pretty much need a stab fighting move to really, really scare Snorlax. And you're still not going to be KOing it, but you're going to threaten it, at least. You're going to do a lot of damage. You're going to 2-hit KO it. You know, nothing else really 2-hit KOs Snorlax. So let's take a look at our viable fighting types. Alright, there's Heracross. Heracross is nice, but let's open Heracross here. Heracross is nice, but what are its fighting stabs? Seismic Toss, well, that doesn't really count. And Rock Smash, 20 base power with the super effective hit. Actually, no, it's more because of stab, so it's 60, I believe. Or actually, it's even less. It's no, it's 60. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it is. Sorry, I always doubt myself on even simple math. But look at the point. Which the point is that it does not have reliable fighting stab. You're not going to run HP fighting Heracross because Heracross is supposed to be bulky, and I mean, in theory you could, but you want HP Rock because you're walled by flyers. The selling point of Heracross is Mega Horn, not that it is a fighting type to threaten Snorlax with. I mean, yeah, it has Reversal, the thing that requires you to be pretty much dead to use it correctly. So yeah, if you have a 1 HP Reversal Heracross, then yes, you are really threatening Snorlax, but you're certainly not switching in. So, before we get to the point about switching in, let's look at more fighting types. So, not a whole lot of fighting types in BL. And I know we went over Machamp, don't worry. And in UU, then seeing a lot of fighters? I don't think so. I think the Hitmons are in NU. And, oh, there's Poliwrath. You know, it's not even UU, and also... Stab Dynamic Punch is, you know, okay, but still Dynamic Punch. But, you know, so yeah, basically point being, not a whole lot of fighting types. You have Machamp, but here's the thing about Machamp. Yeah, it's Cross Chop, it's Stab Cross Chop. That is the strongest fighting move in Gen 2. It is really powerful, and it will smack Snorlax. Let's take a look at the calc. Machamp, Curse Sweeper, Cross Chop. Yeah, that's a ton of damage for Gen 2. You don't see that... every day, especially not against Snorlax. So, yeah, its Cross Chop is strong. But first of all, Machamp is one Pokemon, you know, and you can't run Machamp on every team and just be fine against Snorlax. Cross Chop is also inaccurate and has 8 PP. That's exploitable. You want to Cross Chop 8 times as I switch to Zapdos every time? Be my guest. So, that's a problem. And the more important thing, of course, is that Machamp does not switch into Snorlax. So, there's the whole thing about Snorlax being nearly unkillable, but there's also the fact that it's an offensive threat, because look at its attack stat. You know, its Double Edge, I mean, even its Body Slam is annoying because of paralysis, and Return is kind of a middle ground, because it doesn't have the recoil of Double Edge, but it doesn't have the pair of Body Slam, but it's still pretty strong. But, you know, whatever normal stab it is, you gotta have a resist to it, because otherwise, I mean, you're not going to be switching Machamp into Snorlax Double Edge more than once safely, especially with spikes down. So that's the problem. There are not a lot of Pokemon that resist normal. And overall, here's the thing. You are not overpowering Snorlax reliably. You cannot switch into Snorlax and scare it. Because if Snorlax uses Double Edge, and you switch, whatever your Pokemon switches into it, then you are not, or Double Edge or Curse, you are not going to be able to overpower the Snorlax in return. You pretty much have to stall it. So, you know, you can't switch Machamp into it. You cannot switch Machamp into a normal move. That is why the primary solution to Snorlax is to stall it, because you're not going to be overpowering it, because the few things that can actually hurt it, well, can't switch in, like Machamp. And it's not just Machamp's Cross Chop that actually puts a dent in Snorlax. The other is, of course, Explosion, which is quite common in GSC. It's one of the few reliable ways to actually threaten to KO things. But Explosion has the tiny drawback of KOing your own Pokemon, and Snorlax doesn't have to stay in, so it can be kind of rough. Then there's also Marowak. Marowak does hit Snorlax quite hard, but just like Machamp, it does not heal. Or it does not resist Double Edge, and even worse, it doesn't heal. So, not even with lefties, because it has to hold Thick Club. Now, there are some Pokemon, like Rhydon is good at switching into Snorlax if it doesn't have Earthquake or Toxic. Yeah, Toxic. Snorlax's move pool is annoyingly wide, and it uses moves you might not initially think to great effect. So, yeah, Rhydon is a good switch. So, it is set dependent, but most of the time, against the standard Snorlax set of Double Edge, Curse, Earthquake, and Rest, then you are not going to be able to out-offense this. You are going to have to stall it somehow. So, give me 1 second, because I have to empty the recycling bin on my computer, because I just got informed that I'm losing storage space, and I don't want this video to be ruined because of that, so just enjoy the music while I do that. I thought I was doing better on the storage, but yeah, let's get rid of this, and then we will go over why Curse Earthquake is in fact the standard for Snorlax. So, hashtag vibes or something. God, I love fall so much. It's just, and it's always over so quickly too, which is why I'm really grateful that it's August 31st and it already feels like that. Generally, it's, in recent years, it's felt like, all right, October's here and you still got to wait a little bit, but we're off to a good start this year, so I'm optimistic about that. All right, so I'm just going to clear a couple more things, and then I should be good for a lot more videos, including this one. So, and of course, full credit to Stanley Jr. I think I said I would, if I haven't shown this remix already, then it is awesome. Credit to Stanley Jr. I'll link it in a comment. And yeah. So, my apologies, I did not expect this to come up, but should be good to go in a second. And I really, really hate rendering stuff in, what's the thing I use? DaVinci Resolve. I mean, I do it sometimes if it calls for it, and it's easier, but generally I prefer to do stuff in one shot if it can be helped. Alright, we should be good to go. So, why Curse Earthquake? Well, you might notice that Snorlax's defense stat is not amazing, but after a Curse, that's solved, and of course its attack is really, really powerful. So now you're really not breaking through Snorlax, because even something like a Machamp Cross Chop at +1 defense won't even break 50% most of the time. So, and of course its Double Edge gets powered up. So there's that, and of course Rest to keep it healthy, so it doesn't just eventually falter in the face of opposing attacks or get ruined by Toxic or something. So that is why this is the standard. And Earthquake is the coverage move because there are very few Pokemon that resist normal, and there are almost no Pokemon that resist the combination of normal and ground, because the resists to normal are Rock, Steel, and Ghost. So, Earthquake is super effective against Rock and Steel, and it's neutral on Ghost. And one of the two Ghosts is Gengar, who is of course weak to Earthquake, so it is pretty much perfect. And the other Ghost, Misdreavus, is not weak to Earthquake, but it's got middling HP and not good defense, so it's still getting chunked quite a bit by EQ. So that is why the only true counter to an Earthquake Snorlax is Skarmory, because Skarmory resists normal and is immune to Earthquake. Okay, technically Aerodactyl also has these traits, and some players have explored a niche for it, but for our purposes, for keeping it simple, yes, Aerodactyl also resists normal and ground, but Aerodactyl is also frail and not good, so we're going to focus on Skarm as the only true counter to Earthquake Lax. And I say Earthquake Lax instead of just Curse Earthquake Lax, because sometimes there are other ways of dealing with Curse Lax. Like Growl Miltank will stall it out. I love the fact that Growl and Charm are good moves in the GSC metagame, by the way. But yeah, Growl Miltank stalls it out because Growl has a lot of PP, so you'll beat Curse's 16 PP easily. And you have Milk Drink, and you don't have to even heal because you're weakening the double edges. And Charm Umbreon really stalls it out because it doesn't just force Snorlax to go back to neutral after a curse, it actually makes it go to -1. So those two will handle Curse Lax one-on-one. However, there are two problems with that. First of all, on a switch, they still take a lot from Double Edge. They don't resist it. They're bulky, but over the course of the game, you're not going to be wanting to take a lot of Double Edges. I mean, let's take a look at an unboosted Double Edge against Miltank. I mean, that's still a pretty good chunk. 33 to, or call it 34 to 40. That's a lot. And, you know, the spikes, and you force Miltank to burn through its 16 Milk Drinks. It can be put in a pretty bad situation. Either it fails to check Snorlax, or it is in a worse position to check a teammate of Snorlax's, like Nidoking. So there's that. And let's look at Umbreon, who is famously bulky, and, you know, it's a little less, but it's 33 to 39. But it's still a lot, you know, with spikes that can get hairy. You can get forced to, Umbreon can get forced to rest, and then suddenly it's not in a good position because it's relying on sleep-talking charms, and Double Edges hurt, especially if it gets the boost. So that's one reason why they're not reliable and can't be used instead of Skarmory for Earthquake Lax. And the other reason is that they falter entirely against Belly Drum Snorlax. Because Snorlax can also use Belly Drum. I don't know why it's in the usually useless moves section. That's just because Belly Drum sucks in later generations. But in Gen 2, the slow pace of the metagame, you know, less power, less residual damage. I mean, it's still hard to use. It is still half your HP, but it is definitely viable. So there's a Drumlax, and you cannot Growl or Charm stall a Drumlax. It will mow right through you. So Growl, so that's why Skarmory is good, because it will stave off even a Belly Drum Snorlax. So, of course, another strength of Snorlax, in addition to being unkillable with Curse and just in general, another strength of it is that it has a great move pool. So it does not have to run, what's it called, Earthquake. It can run Fire Blast or Flamethrower. I think Flamethrower is more reliable because Fire Blast's APP can kind of suck, especially with accuracy. So Flamethrower, it can... Here's the thing with Snorlax. It can really run any combination of moves it wants and still be good. We'll get into all of them, don't you worry. But here's an example. So we're just going to go back to Curse because that's more standard. Drum Firelax is technically a thing because it blows through Skarmory as well as Skarmory plus Charm Umbreon or Growl Miltank. Those combinations were popular on really old stall teams. However, people don't really bank on those as much anymore. They prefer to have a different Firelax check, like a Ghost or a Rock, which we'll get into in a second. So, Belly Drum Firelax, well, Belly Drum Lax as a whole is already rarer, but Belly Drum Fire is really rare. But it is something to consider that it could run that. So when you are relying on Miltank and Skarmory to check Snorlax, then you got to be aware. I mean, there are other ways Snorlax can mess them up, but it still can break through them with Drum Fire because that's what Snorlax does. Oh, also on Belly Drum sets, it's going to run Body Slam or Return as the stab. Belly Drum Double Edge, I mean, yeah, you could do it, but it is kind of overkill, and the recoil is really bad, so... there's that. So, Flamethrower, and suddenly Skarmory is no longer going to be walling you long term, and you can also roast Forretress, and Steelix, which takes Earthquakes pretty well because of its... I mean, it's not a great check, but for offense, it is a check. And it takes Earthquakes pretty well with its high defense, and it curses itself. And it gets to curse first because if Snorlax curses up to boost its Earthquake, then Steelix will go first and match that curse. So with offense, the name of the game is have a check to it. Have something like a Steelix or a Rhydon or a T-Tar or a Golem, but for the most part, you are going to have to beat Snorlax down with attacks, like Thunder Zapdos is the best example. So a lot of players use Cloyster to ward it off because it can Toxic and it can threaten Explosion, and it can take most hits from Lax pretty well. So Cloyster and your normal resistant, usually a Phaser with Roar, so once Snorlax rests, you can get it out of there and prey on it when it's vulnerable while it's sleeping. So that's generally the name of the game with offense. You gotta have offense, first of all. You gotta actually be able to capitalize on that Snorlax while it's sleeping. Like, for example, Machamp is a great switch into a sleeping Snorlax, because if your switch into a sleeping Snorlax is just something that can't really immediately hurt it, like let's say a non-Acid Armor Vaporeon, because it can't actually stall it out, then that's still not ideal. You're not as immediately threatening. With Machamp into sleeping Snorlax, you're immediately threatening it out. So with offense, you got to beat Snorlax down and phase it out and just chip at it. Thief, Toxic, and then try to get the upper hand with your own Snorlax. We will get into Snorlax on Snorlax soon, but yeah. So with offense, you got to beat it down and wear it down, beat it down, phase it out, then prey on it later. But with stall, then you need 2 checks / counters. So you gotta adapt to its coverage, and so you gotta run Skarm on stall teams. That's just there is no replacement for Skarmory. Otherwise, you will be weak to Earthquake Snorlax in some capacity, especially Belly Drum. So there's that, but you obviously can't run Skarmory as your sole Snorlax check, because then if it just slaps on Flamethrower, then you are toast. So, pun slightly intended. So that's why players run Rock or Ghost, so that they are fine against Curselax no matter what coverage moves it runs. So Misdreavus or Gengar. Gengar's not great in longer games, but it can generally get the job done for a period of time. And the more traditional answer is something like a Rhydon or a Tyranitar or a Golem in more recent years. So that's generally what is done. And then, so yeah, that's for defensive teams. Now, this is just a standard Snorlax set. We haven't gotten into Monolax either. So, while Snorlax can run a coverage move on Curse, then it can also just kind of accentuate itself with and go mono. So you can run just Double Edge, Body Slam, Return, whatever stab. I generally tend to prefer Double Edge on most sets. So, and then you can run either Sleep Talk. So now you are dangerous even when sleeping, and that is why I specified for those offensive teams, those phasers should be normal resist. So your Steelix, T-Tar, Rhydon, Golem, because otherwise, if you try to use like a Roar Raikou to phase out Curselax when it's asleep, and it's a Sleep Talker, and it just double edges you with a boosted Curse through Sleep Talk, and then goodbye Raikou, goodbye game. So I mean, there are ways you can get around this, like if you have a Gengar and you're running some sort of experimental hyper-offense team, then yeah. But for beginners, then you are going to need to use this tactic. The proven tactic that even the skilled players are using 9 out of 10 times, if not more. So you force it to rest, and then you phase it out with your normal resistant phaser. If it doesn't Sleep Talk, that's great. That means it's more vulnerable when it's asleep, and you can capitalize on it with Machamp. If it does have Sleep Talk, it only has normal stab, and your normal resistant phaser will stand in its way all game. So that's you try to cover every scenario in like with your team, so that you're not scrambling for answers, because there's nothing worse than being unprepared for the most dangerous Pokemon in the tier that you are guaranteed to face in every single game. I mean, this kind of goes without saying, but if your team cannot handle... I mean, some players like to say, I'm just going to bank on him not using X Pokemon. There is none of that against Snorlax. I mean, some players like to say, I'm banking on him not using X Snorlax set, which I guess can be okay if you really know what you're doing and the set is somewhat excuse me, obscure, but still generally you're going to want to have a plan for Snorlax, or its most common variants. So that's what I was referring to specifically with the normal resistant phaser thing. You don't want to get run over by Sleep Talk Snorlax. And if you can't fit one, have a ghost. So there's that, but it doesn't have to be Sleep Talk. While it is really nasty to be able to threaten while sleeping, and also incidentally, Sleep Talk Curselax is one of the best answers to the incredibly dangerous Nidoking. It's just a great all-around wall. And then, matter of fact, while we're on the subject, then I want to mention that while Snorlax is a great Pokemon because it's an offensive-defensive threat, and it uses its defensive capability to get on the field easily every single game, and start dishing out its dangerous offense, it can also be used as a wall. So, Snorlax can really do anything you want it to for your team. So, in recent times, players have been using a lot of Sleep Talk sets without a boosting move, without Curse. Obviously, you're not running Belly Drum, Rest Talk, that's dumb, but yeah, they'll run Double Edge, Rest, Sleep Talk, and then, you know, Earthquake, Surf, Thunder, Flamethrower, you know, whatever. So that makes it a great all-around wall because it absorbs sleep, so it handles Nidoking, it handles Jynx, it handles Gengar, and it chips away at the opposing team. Because even without boosting, the Snorlax's Double Edge is still an annoying tool, and with the coverage option, then it can also still be annoying. I mean, you don't need a Curse to chip away at Steelix with Earthquake, with Spikes up. So, that's still a great set. So that's the all-around wall Snorlax. And I did mention Surf earlier, and, I mean, we'll get more into, like, the lesser-used Snorlax sets soon. Like, the gimmickier stuff where players start experimenting and seeing just what they can pull off. But, yeah, so this is the non-setup Snorlax. The Rest Talk wall, which just can run everything. You can run Flamethrower if you're trying to fish for burns, or you know, just to keep Fortress out of your face. You can run Surf for Golem, pretty much. Also, as long as you can chip Gengar, anything is generally enough. But Surf for Golem, and also, like, technically, like, Rhydon and chipping Steelix still. And Thunder, even Friend of Mr. ABR uses a lot of the ABR, Kratos Mana, I think Earthworm also. They use like the Earthquake and Flamethrower and Surf variants. I think ABR uses Surf the most. I know Kratos Mana has been using Ice Beam because you have a lot of opportunity to fish for freezes in long games. But I think... But generally, Earthquake is the safest. I think that's on the most amount of teams. I see a lot of the player players like Sulcata and Fear. They're running a lot of Earthquake, Rest Talk, Lax, just because it's the safest option overall. If your objective is to make Snorlax a great overall wall, then Earthquake will let it check the biggest amount of Pokemon. Because a lot of what GSC is, this is actually really important, is your ability to win a lot of one-on-ones. And with its lack of weaknesses, alongside its great stats, then Snorlax wins a lot of one-on-ones. So that's what gives it so much opportunity in every single game. So Earthquake lets you check a lot of stuff. You know, you don't mess around against Gengar. And, you know, Skarmory is probably going to wall you anyway, and it's... You know, it's generally better to be walled by Skarmory, who's pretty passive and a free switch for Zapdos, than to be walled by something potentially threatening like Tyranitar. So, yeah, this makes it a good all-around check, but you can run Flamethrower if you're running it on a stall team, like a lot of people do. I mean, it can be run on stall, it can be run on offense, just like every Snorlax, but this team, on offense, it really patches things together because offense gets run over by Jynx, Gengar, Nidoking, that kind of stuff. It reinforces you against Zapdos. And on stall, it just makes your team more unbreakable, so it's just generally valuable, while still providing offensive presence, of course. You're not going to be a wall breaker with this set, but yeah. So that's that. And yeah, Friend of Mr. Golem ran Thunder years ago. He was the first guy I saw to run a Rest Talk non-boosting Snorlax, so props to him. He was running Thunder on it, and it was really irritating. So, yeah, there's that. I'm personally not a huge fan of this Snorlax set, but I recognize its merit. You know, I prefer Snorlax to be more offensive because I think, you know, that's not really important right now. I think it's good offensively, or I think it's good enough defensively, but I recognize a lot of teams really appreciate the pure walling ability to further facilitate its frailer offensive teammates. So that's its role. Anyway, that was Rest Talk Lax. We talked about Mono Lax with Sleep Talk. And now we are going to Mono Curse Lax with Lovely Kiss, because Snorlax just wasn't dangerous enough. They had to give it a sleep move. It's from a really old event, the NYPC, New York Pokemon Center, I believe, where it's the same event that gave the Eevee's Growth and Nidoking Lovely Kiss and something else, but those are the big ones. And of course Lovely Kiss Lax. And this makes it really dumb, because there's nothing really that safely sleep absorbs against Lax. I mean, you can say technically something like Rest Talk Suicune, or an opposing Snorlax, actually. But before we get into why Curse Talk Lax is the safest option against opposing Snorlax, then, I mean, I guess Lovely Kiss really does speak for itself, because it's really dumb. You can do stuff like, alright, I cursed on the switch, T-Tar came in, he's going to roar me out, whoops, I put him to sleep, and now I can batter away with several +1 double edges, I don't take much recoil in return, and he's just getting chipped for free, because GSC sleep is nuts. It's up to 6 turns max, which is crazy. So, yeah, Lovely Kiss Curse Rest is really nasty. And of course, Lovely Kiss Belly Drum has huge upside, because now even Skarmory isn't walling you. Of course, there's also a lot of risk, but Lovely Kiss kind of gets rid of some of that risk, because you can, even if your Belly Drum doesn't work, then you've put something out of commission with Sleep Talk. So, there is that. And, oh, Lovely Kiss is also a great move to throw out early in the game against offense. You know, some players believe, well, I want to hold my Lovely Kiss back as far as possible, so I get late into the game and I have a surprise weapon. But honestly, I think it's a great weapon earlier in the game, too, and I think a lot of players agree with that. In that, Cloyster is the immediate switch to Snorlax pretty much every time, because why not get spikes against the best Pokemon in the tier? That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. And then, you know, you Lovely Kiss it, and it's in trouble. So, it can be really nasty for stealing tempo. So, yeah, and I just want to go back to Sleep Talk Curse Lax. This is the best Lax set if your goal is to also be safe against other Lax. Because while the Rest Talk No Boost Lax, or Rest Talk No Curse Lax is great against walling everything else, it no longer walls itself. Now, while I'm not going to say that Snorlax walls itself, really, because, of course, it does not resist its own double edge, it still is a good check to opposing Curse Lax, because it will curse first on the next turn if the opposing Snorlax cursed as it switched in, and then you can win the Curse War because of Sleep Talk healing you and giving you more opportunities to attack. Fun little fact, in a Curse Lax War, you should start double edging when you are at +5 attack. Not +6, because your attack stat, thanks to GSC mechanics, will top out at 999, and +5, I think you generally are taking double edges just as well as +6 in terms of defense, and you keep speed. So if your opponent curses to +6, then you will be hitting first or resting first every time. So that's valuable. Keep that in mind if you are intent on playing some GSC and using the set, which you will if you play more than a few games of GSC. So there's that. Now, I believe, oh yes, we have one more set with Rest, because, yeah, Snorlax does not need to use Rest. As iconic as Rest is on Lax, because we all know how in-game it sleeps in front of our game locations, but it does not need to use Rest, and it becomes terrifying when it doesn't do so. But yeah, actually no, there are 2 more sets. So the first one is Toxic, because yes, it can use Toxic on stall teams. This is pretty much exclusively a stall team set. Stall teams that like to use a lot of Toxic to wear the opponent down, force them to rest, make them exploitable. Like an active Roar Raikou is capable of shuffling through opposing stall teams like butter, but it's, or like a knife through butter, but it's, when it's resting, then it is a sitting duck for everything. So, obviously, Snorlax is not really toxicking Raikou as much as double-edging it, but it toxics a lot of stuff, because, you know, everything, the steel types that are immune to toxic are not going to like Flamethrower. You know, Skarmory, Fortress, and Steelix, the OU Steels, they are not going to be taking Flamethrower. Everything else gets Toxic. You'd think, yeah, there are poison types, but well, most poison types are like Poison Grass, like Venusaur and Victreebel and stuff. And, you know, Muck is, well, I guess it boils down to poison types don't resist Double Edge. And the one that does, Gengar, is, you know, a pretty good answer to this set, but it still doesn't hurt Snorlax much in return. It has to risk Explosion, and it will get slowly eroded by Flamethrower with Spikes Up. So that's why I use Flamethrower with Toxic over, I mean, you can use Earthquake, technically, and still hit Steelix, but you're not going to be threatening Fortress at all, because you won't Earthquake it, you won't Curse Up in its face, and you're not getting past Skarmory, thus defeating the point of the set, so Toxic Flamethrower is what it should be running. So yeah, Toxic Lax is good, and then you can run a full-out, all-out attacking, not Water Gun. Does it even learn Water Gun? I don't think so. Mixed set. So, oh, it does learn Water Gun. That's crazy. So yeah, this is just a straight-up mixed attacker, and you can rest, and you give up boosting. Instead of boosting up to do more damage, you do more damage with extra coverage. So you have Earthquake, and suddenly your opponent's Skarmory thinks, okay, well, I wall it because it has Earthquake, boom, it has Fire Blast too. Obviously, you are giving up on a move to do so. If it had 5 moves and it could run Double Edge, Rest, Earthquake, Fire Blast, and Curse, then it would be, obviously, probably banned. But the point is that you can still get a lot out of it with coverage. You know, mixed attacking is pretty tough in GSC because you generally have a tough time doing a ton of damage. But who's the best at it? The best Pokemon in the metagame. The only thing that Snorlax isn't the best at in the metagame is spiking, because it doesn't learn spikes, but you know, everything else, yikes. So there's this mixed set. You can also run Thunder, because Thunder ruins Cloyster while still hitting Skarmory super effectively. And what's really nice about it is that a lot of players like to fish for paralysis with Snorlax against checks like Miltank and Umbreon, or even like something like a Suicune, so that they can, when the opponent's Pokemon is paralyzed, either you take advantage of them being paralyzed or you take advantage of them resting it off. So, yeah, Thunder is a really nice move. For those purposes, also has more PP than Fire Blast, so Skarmory is a lot tougher time stalling you out. And the big hit on Cloyster is, of course, amazing. And just threatening paralysis, because imagine, you know, because you can run Curse, you can technically run Curse Thunder. I'm not going to go over every single possible combination of moves Snorlax can run. I'm going to come close, but not quite. But the thing about Lax, like we said earlier, it can run anything. So you can just run the Curse Fire set and just replace it with Thunder. Now, while you are going to be horribly walled by Steelix and Rhydon, now you are threatening paralysis on Tyranitar and the Ghosts. God, especially the Ghosts. Those get ruined by paralysis. Especially because Gengar almost never runs rest, and, you know, even Misdreavus getting rested, yikes. So, we're not even getting into the team support Snorlax needs. I mean, it's pretty much just, the biggest one is Pursuit, because if you're running a set vulnerable to Ghosts, then you can just tack on a Pursuit Tyranitar and bingo. So if you're running a Curse Talk Lax, it's not a hard rule, but it generally helps a lot. You run a Mono Lax, you run a Fire Lax, and you're struggling against Ghosts, and your Pursuit Tar takes care of that for you. That's a general idea. So, yeah, so there's Curse Thunder. And then there is, I think that is pretty much every set we can think of that runs Rest. Actually, there are a few more, so you can take that mix set, and instead of Earthquake, then you run Fire Blast and Thunder. And while technically you're walled by rocks, then you sometimes can take advantage of the fact that it's generally one of Fire Blast or Thunder, and you capitalize on it that way. So as soon as your opponent sees Thunder on Snorlax, and you're like, okay, my Fortress is safe against it, or my Steelix is safe against it, and boom, they get Fire Blasted. So you keep the paralysis option of Thunder with the steel coverage of Fire Blast. So, or, you know, Flamethrower, whatever. So yeah, and I mean, you can even run Surf here. Like, you can run any combination of that. And I'm not just saying this as a hypothetical, like, yeah, technically Snorlax could run this. No, these are sets that have been used in high-level tournaments to success. Because a lot of, in like one, or best of ones, or even tournament best of threes, and being able to surprise your opponent is valuable. But, of course, this Snorlax set is great even when you know what its set is. That's the beauty of Lax. It's so tough to deal with before you know what its set is. That's why you got to just generally throw your Cloyster in and have your blanket check. But even once you know exactly what it's running, it's still incredibly tough to deal with. So that's the mark of a good Pokemon. And the surprise, of course, just makes it even more difficult to deal with. So you can run Surf and Thunder, or Surf, Fire Blast. I think Surf Thunder is more common, but you can really want to run whatever, because Surf will hit the rocks and Fire Blast will hit the steels. So you're really just doing whatever you like. So yeah, alright, so those are the rest variants, and now we're getting into the non-rest variants. So the most standard that I really love, I love this set, because it has Self-Destruct too, which is not quite Explosion, but thanks to Stab on Self-Destruct, remember, in Gens 1 through 4, then Self-Destruct and Explosion have the effect of halving the opponent's defense, which effectively makes them twice as powerful, you know. It says 200 base power, but it's really 400. So, while most Pokemon are running with an Explosion, which is 250 times 2 is 500, Snorlax has one of 600 because of Stab on top of it, despite the lower base power. Explosion Snorlax would be absolutely insane, but I guess they knew they had to hold it back somehow. So there was that. And yeah, so Self-Destruct is nice because you can remove, I mean, what you basically do is you make sure that your normal resistant counters are out of the way, and then you just take something down. Or what's also common is that early game you use your double edge power and then the coverage of Earthquake and Thunder. This can also be Fire Blast, by the way. Or you can run Double Edge Thunder Fire Blast, just like we saw with the Rest set, but with Self-Destruct over Rest. So, you know, whatever. But those combinations are also fairly common, but this one is the most common, I think, because luring Cloyster is a big deal. I've also used this set a lot, DE Lovely Kiss, because you shut something down and then you just... You can Thunder Cloyster, then you can Lovely Kiss the Lax, or the Lax or Licks, yeah. Oh, earlier I forgot to mention, because there's just so much Snorlax to get through. That Lovely Kiss Lax is also a good check to opposing Curse Lax, just like Curse Talk. While it's not good against Curse Talk Lax, because Curse Talk Lax absorbs Lovely Kiss and just keeps on trucking with Sleep Talk, against others, then you outspeed a Lax that has Cursed on the switch-in, and then you put it to sleep, and then you curse up yourself, and then you beat it one-on-one. So, the Mono Laxes as a whole, whether the Mono Curse Laxes, whether it's Lovely Kiss or Sleep Talk, those are geared towards handling other Lax as well as being generally ridiculous to deal with. So, there's this, but yeah, now that I mentioned these common possibilities, if you're not watching the screen, then it will. I realize there's not a lot going on here, but there's if you want to get all the knowledge that's being displayed on screen here, if I can be so pretentious, then you should keep an eye on this, because I'm talking about things that I'm showing on screen, combinations of moves. Of course, if you're just listening and you're content to just follow along like that, I think you're getting pretty much the whole picture. But yeah, that little rant aside, then this is the standard Mixed Lax set with DE, EQ, Thunder, Self-Destruct, and what you do early game is you use your Power of Double Edge, you clear out your checks with Earthquake and Thunder, and then once you are low on health from all the spikes and the chip damage you haven't healed off and your Double Edge recoil, you take something with you with Self-Destruct, because Snorlax is strong, but it's not like OHKOing Zapdos from full strong. But now, you know, Zapdos is like, alright, yes, Snorlax at 40%, I 2-KO him from here, or at least force a rest, and then Snorlax self-destructs and takes Zapdos with it. So, there's that. And yeah, that's what Boomlax does, and there are lots of possibilities. You can sleep and boom on the same set. It's just unbelievably tough to deal with. And then you don't even have to go mixed. You can go curse. And what this set does is that it pretends to be a standard Curse Lax, and you can run Body Slam over it too. Matter of fact, I probably would. You run Curse to paralyze Scarm before you try to +1 boom on it. And what you do is you curse up, you pretend you're a standard curse lax, which means that if you don't have a Skarmory, you're going to have some trouble dealing with it, especially with Body Slam, paralyzing pretty much everything, and you can't thwart it with you can't thwart the Body Slam paralysis with Gengar because, you know, you get Earthquake, and you can't hurt it back because it's boosted its defense with Curse, so, you know, best case you Destiny Bond it, but again, risky, not reliable, etc. So yeah, the purpose of Curse Boom Lax is to either mow through stuff that doesn't have a Skarm, or if there is a Skarm, then you lure it in and you blow it up. And then you take advantage of that with a partner, Machamp, Marowak, or most commonly Curse Heracross, who is really tough to stop, but Skarmory, of course, stops it all day. So when you take out one of the few things that can stop it, then you're in business. So, and of course, it's a Snorlax, so you're still just spreading damage, spreading para if you choose to do so, and mowing through pretty much everything. But that is the purpose of Curse Boom Lax in general. So, amazingly, I think we have covered pretty much every Lax so far. So those are all the ones that have come to mind so far. And if I've missed one, then please let me know. But we've covered Standard Curse Lax and its coverage options, and its mono options, and Rest Talk Wall Lax, and now the Boom Lax. Oh, yes, of course. So I talked about how pretty much any combination of moves on Lax works, but so far we've split them into rest sets and self-destruct sets, but there's really no reason that you can't run self-destruct and rest on Lax. Now, I'm not saying, you know, this is a common Lax set, and now we're getting into, like, the stuff that's more experimental, let's say, but you absolutely could run, just as an example of Snorlax's versatility and power, you really can run pretty much everything on it. And here you see Double Edge, Curse, Rest. What's my last move? Oh, Self-Destruct. So I can blow up Skarm, or I can just act as a solid mono Curse Lax. Either way is fine. And that's just an example. You know, you change with the flow of the game. Either you Curse and you Rest and you're unkillable, or you take out something that's bothering you with Self-Destruct. So there's that, and there's also something that was just on the tip of my tongue that I'm not thinking of. Oh, right. On Agility Pass teams, like the ones with Marowak I was talking about at the beginning of the video, then you can run a fast Belly Drum set with with last move either Lovely Kiss, because this is just dumb when you've been passing agility from Smeargle. You're a +2 speed Snorlax does not outspeed Gengar and above, but you know everything else just mostly melts. So that this way with Lovely Kiss, then you blow through Skarmory trying to stop you, and with Protect, then you prevent things like Explosion Gengar, or just if Cloyster's at full health, it can take a hit. I think against, I'm not sure about that one because I don't use a lot of BP. Yeah, can it take a plus? Yeah, okay, that's a roll. So Double Edge. So Protect is just nice for... oh, it's Steelix that can take a 999 Earthquake. That's it. So with that, then you prevent it from exploding back in your face. I guess in theory, you could just get roared anyway. But Protect's just a nice move to have against explosions in general. And of course, for this lets you heal off Double Edge recoil, which is really nice when you're spamming +6 Double Edges and thus getting almost as good as you give. And because you're getting as much, or you're taking a lot more recoil when your Double Edges are boosted, of course. And with +6 Double Edges, then you're doing a lot of damage. So even whereas Double Edge is partly so nice because the recoil barely shows up because of Snorlax's huge HP, then you know when they're that boosted, then they start to show up even for Lax. So there's this set. Oh. Some players even run sets with no rest or self-destruct, like this set, which is really annoying for Cloyster offense, or teams without Skarmory in general, because Cloyster will get slept, and then their rock resist, or sorry, their normal resistant phaser, their rocker, their steel, then their rocker, their Steelix, I should say, because we're counting out Steelix. Or counting out Skarmory, sorry, we are counting Steelix, then you Curse EQ them, and it's just generally a giant pain, because you just trade a coverage move for... I mean, in the old days, then some people ran like Double Edge, Curse, Earthquake, Fire Blast, which is still an okay set, but so that's the entire point. You really can run anything. For the most part, if you're a beginner, I would just stick with the established sets here. If you join my Discord, you can go to the GSC discussion channel and ask anything. You can go to the All Gen Resources channel, go to GSC, and you can find the sample teams. Wow, that was a weird stumble of the tongue. And you can see what lax sets they run, but they're generally what I've listed here. So I'm looking if there's anything else that I can really run. I mean, some people liked, a long time ago, ran Substitute Lax, which is kind of like Protect in that it guards you against Explosion, but it also has the benefit of guarding you against Status, and it handles Growl, Miltank, and Charm Umbreon, because they can't Growl or Charm you through a sub. So there's that. I mean, I don't think this set is like very good, but people have actually used it, and it has been good because at the end of the day, it's a Snorlax. So there's that. Oh, here's another great set that we don't see enough of. Talking about Mono Lax options, then we talked about Curse Self-Destruct Rest, but there's also Curse Belly Drum. So what this does here is you're either the safe option, because Curse is a very safe move to click with Snorlax, because at worst, you get stalled for a few turns. It's not like you're giving opportunities for counterattacks, because when you Belly Drum on a switch to anything, then that can go badly. Like if they switch to their Snorlax as you Belly Drum, then suddenly you're in trouble because you're at half health. But if they go to Machamp, then, you know, even worse. But if you Curse, then worst case stalemate. That's why Curse is a very safe move. So here you combine the safety of Curse with Belly Drum for stallish games that you're going to need to go risky or go more aggressive in order to break through. And you can use them depending on the game. And what this also does is it lets you completely destroy Growl, Miltank, and Charm Umbreon, because you Curse to +5, or you Curse to max defense, and, you know, they're going to Growl or Charm you all day, and that's fine, because then you'll be at max defense, and then you Belly Drum, and no matter what your attack is in, what state your attack is in, then you are going to go to 999 attack. Belly Drum always does that. Even if you are at -6 attack, Belly Drum will not just go +6 and bring you back to neutral. It will bring you to max no matter what. So there's that. And also a quick important note on Belly Drum I should have mentioned before is that Belly Drum, when you are at less than 50% HP in GSC, Belly Drum fails, but it also gives you a +2 attack. So think of it like when Snorlax is at 49% or lower, using Belly Drum is basically Snorlax or Swords Dance. Belly Drum basically turns into Swords Dance when you're at half health or less, and that's only in GSC. But it is something to be aware of. It's tough to make use of because you're still boosting at less than half HP, and that's less than half HP is generally when Snorlax looks to rest and, you know, heal up so it can keep tanking attacks. So it's a little riskier, but if you've supported it with Paralysis, or, you know, you're just playing a little riskier, and it can have huge payoff because suddenly you have a +2 Curse Lax. Or +2 Snorlax. You know how dangerous Snorlax would be if it could immediately do +2? So, yeah. And of course, you don't lose HP like Belly Drum. Like, over 50% Belly Drum. So, actually, I think Belly Drum turns into Swords Dance at exactly 50%. Basically, as the HP where it would normally fail, because you don't have 50% to give. So, there's that. And here's another option for Mono Lax, and I think that's pretty much the end of it, actually. I mean, I'll check to be sure. But you can run 2 normal stabs. You can run Double Edge for power alongside Body Slam for paralysis. You can run Return, because one thing Return has over Body Slam and Double Edge is that both Body Slam and Double Edge have 24 PP, which seems like a ton, but in longer games, you kind of have to be careful with them. But Return has 32. So, I think with 2 normal stabs, then you generally don't need to do 32 plus 24. You can just do 24 twice. And you can combine Body Slam's power with, or Body Slam's paralysis with Double Edge's power, but you get the point I'm trying to make. That you can feasibly run Curse with 2 normal moves and they'll still be excellent. So that's pretty much it, honestly. What other, let's just go through its move pool. You're never going to use a hidden power, you don't want to mess with the DVs, and Snorlax has all the coverage you can want anyway. You don't use Reflect. You don't use Rock Slide or S-Toss or Shadow Ball or... You don't use Shadow Ball like you do in Advanced because the Ghost types don't have Levitate. There are no abilities in Gen 2. So, we've gone over everything else. You don't use Thunderbolt over Thunder. It's too weak. The thing with Flamethrower is that it's either hitting super... You really need Thunder's paralysis rate as well as its huge power against Cloyster. And Fire Blast is just... Its 8 PP is really what bites it. I think if Fire Blast had 16 PP, I would rarely say use it over Flamethrower, but the extra PP on Thunderbolt, or on Thunder over Thunderbolt, edges it out over T-Bolt there, and the fact that its power is so much bigger against Cloyster. The Cloyster matchup is pretty much the entire reason to run T-Bolt, or Thunder, sorry. I'm losing my mind after an hour of yammering about Lax. So, and you want the power. Let's take a look at Lax versus Cloyster with Thunder. And yeah, you really want this. Double Edge plus Thunder always KOs Cloyster, I believe. And Double Edge plus T-Bolt, so you can't run Body Slam. I mean, yeah, you could run Body Slam plus T-Bolt or plus Thunder and just paralyze everything, even ground types. But with I believe it's I think you need like 2 absolute minimum rolls to not KO it or something, but it's very not favored, especially with the paralysis rate on top of Thunder's power. So most of the time you are messing up Cloyster with Thunder, so don't use T-Bolt. So we went over Toxic, Amnesia doesn't do anything, Attract, bad, bad, bad. Oh, I guess Coolio would want me to mention this. There's a Defense Curl rollout with Belly Drum, I think. It's really... It basically destroys Stall, but it's not really a set. But he'll be glad I mentioned it. So yeah, here's the. I think Fear used it in SPL and it actually won. So you can go looking through the replays of this past SPL if you like. But yeah, this set is really dumb. But Defense Curl rollout, you know, you get really because Defense Curl boosts your defense like Curse, and then rollout is. Of course, boosted by Defense Curl as well as getting stronger, and then you Belly Drum, and it's pretty dumb. But yeah, so that's a nice little gimmick, and yeah, completely destroys Stall. So then you can just do, yeah, pretty much that's it. No real use for Hyper Beam. This isn't RBY. No use for anything else. I mean, I'm sure there's like something to be experimented with here. That's why, like Psych Up or Mimic, I could see those moves potentially having use, or like Rain Dance or Sunny Day, I could totally see those being used. Not Solar Beam, but, you know, totally. You could absolutely experiment with that, but I would leave that for the really skilled players. So, because if you're an inexperienced player, and you should learn the basics before you try to reinvent the metagame. I'm not saying don't experiment. Far from it. I'm just saying you gotta walk before you can run, or before you can fly, or whatever. So, yes, Swagger, I'm sure has some dumb use, but don't use that. And that's pretty much it. Zap Cannon is just an inferior Thunder in every way. So that's Snorlax, and I want to thank you guys for watching. But first, I also want to mention that Snorlax is not just the best Pokemon in OU, but even Ubers. Now, this one is not as clear-cut because... Where is Gen 2 Ubers? There it is. Yeah, so even with... Now, this one is not as clear-cut, and I am not a huge GSE Ubers expert. I've played it in the past, but like I said in the Oris Ubers Hack vs. Level 56 game, I prefer to be more of a spectator. But even with no holds barred, then Lax still has a claim to best Pokemon in the game. I think some people would contest that with Mewtwo, and I've seen both opinions from respected GSE Ubers players. And the main difference is that Lugia actually walls it really nicely, isn't hit by spikes, has 32 PP recover, shrugs. It's so bulky that it shrugs off even neutral double edges forever, and it has Curse and Whirlwind of its own, so it walls it really nicely. But yeah, so while no one's saying Celebi or Ho-Oh is better than Snorlax, and that actually kind of brings up the interesting paradox of two Pokemon worse than Snorlax being in Ubers while Snorlax is not, but that's just the way GSE is. So, I mean, you can say you want Celebi and Ho-Oh and OU. Those metagames have been played before, and overall it's been agreed. OU with Snorlax and no Celebi and Ho-Oh is the best configuration for GSC. So yeah, Lugia is really good, Mew's really good, Mewtwo is really good. Celebi and Ho-Oh have their moments too. But yeah, Snorlax is still amazing. I think it runs a Lovely Kiss Curse Self-Destruct a lot, which is a set that could be good in OU, but generally you're not going to see it too much. So it runs that, and you know it goes toe-to-toe with Mewtwo, Lugia, Mew, and I mean a lot of OU Pokemon are used in Ubers as well, of course. But yeah, so there's that, and yeah, so that was a little bonus because I don't want to make too many misinformed comments about Ubers, but yeah, I think it's either Mewtwo or Snorlax that's number one, and you know it could go either way, but Snorlax is just incredible. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something from this if you're inexperienced, or hell, even if you're experienced, maybe this gave you an idea for a Snorlax set to use on your next team, and maybe you just like listening to the velvety tones of my voice. Anyway, the opposite thought is too painful. I don't remember if I said that earlier, so apologies if I did. That was like an hour ago. Anyway, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Long live Snorlax. So I will catch you next time.